What if the most intricate, persuasive, and dangerous con artist you'll ever encounter isn't some shadowy figure in a back alley, but the voice inside your own head? Think about it for a moment. That inner narrator, the one constructing your reality, your identity, your choices. What if it's not always telling you the truth? What if, in fact, it's actively, brilliantly, keeping you in the dark about who you really are? It's a deeply unsettling thought, isn't it? To consider that the one thing you believe you control, your own mind, might be playing tricks on you. Yet, one of the most profound explorers of the human psyche, Carl Jung, spent his life mapping these very internal deceptions. He warned us, with a wisdom that echoes even more loudly in our modern age of curated identities, that the human mind has an almost infinite capacity for self-deception. And ignoring this warning, well, that's like navigating a minefield blindfolded. Today, we're not just going to talk about this in abstract terms. We're going to delve into why your mind might be its own worst enemy, and what Jung's timeless insights reveal about the hidden architects of our thoughts and actions. Forget dry psychology lectures. Think of this as an expedition into the uncharted territories of your own inner world. Are you ready to perhaps meet a version of yourself you never knew existed? Because by the end of our journey, you might start to question everything you thought you knew about you. Let's begin with someone we all might recognize, perhaps even in ourselves. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah is successful, driven, and by all outward appearances, has her life perfectly under control. She's the person friends turn to for advice, the one who always seems to have the answers. If you ask Sarah, she'd tell you she values honesty and integrity above all else. She believes she makes decisions rationally, based on clear, logical thinking. But lately, things haven't been going so well for Sarah. A major project at work, one she poured her heart and soul into, failed spectacularly. Her explanation? It was bad luck, she tells her friends. The market conditions were impossible, and frankly, some of my team members just weren't pulling their weight. Internally, a slightly different story plays out, a whisper she barely acknowledges. It's not my fault. I did everything right. If they had just listened to me more. Then there's her relationship. Her partner has been distant, and arguments are becoming more frequent. Sarah's take? He's become so sensitive lately, so demanding. I'm trying my best, but he just doesn't appreciate how much pressure I'm under. She tells herself she's the patient one, the one holding things together, the victim of an increasingly unreasonable partner. You see the pattern here? Sarah has constructed a narrative, a story where she is competent, well-intentioned, and often let down by external circumstances or the shortcomings of others. It's a comfortable story, one that protects her image of herself. But is it the true story? What if Sarah's project failed partly because her ambition sometimes blinds her to crucial details, or because her honesty occasionally tips into harsh criticism that demoralizes her team? What if her partner is distant not because he's inherently unreasonable, but because Sarah, in her relentless pursuit of her own goals, has unintentionally made him feel unheard, unseen, and unimportant? This, my friends, is the subtle, insidious nature of self-deception that Jung was so fascinated by. It's not about outright, malicious lying to oneself. It's about the blind spots, the convenient omissions, the narratives we weave, often unconsciously, to protect our fragile egos, to avoid uncomfortable truths, and to maintain a sense of control and righteousness in a chaotic world. Sarah isn't a bad person. She's simply human, caught in a web spun by her own mind. And this is where our exploration truly begins. Because if even someone as seemingly self-aware as Sarah can be so thoroughly misled by her own internal storyteller, what does that mean for the rest of us? What hidden mechanisms are at play, deep within our psyches, that make us our own most unreliable narrators? And more importantly, as Jung might ask, what happens if we never wake up to this deception? Later in this journey, we'll uncover specific ways Jung believed our minds betray us, and the profound, sometimes startling reasons why. But first, we need to understand why these internal illusions are so powerful, so seductive. The truth is, these deceptions serve a purpose, even if that purpose ultimately leads us astray. So, why do our minds go to such lengths to build these elaborate, often misleading stories about ourselves like Sarah has? Why this powerful, almost instinctual drive towards self-deception? The truth, as Jung helps us understand, is that these illusions, at least initially, aren't trying to harm us. They're trying to protect us. They're the psyche's ancient defense mechanisms, forged in the fires of our earliest experiences and our deepest desires for acceptance and belonging. Imagine, for a moment, that you are building a character for the grand stage of life. You want this character to be liked, to be respected, to succeed. What do? You highlight their best qualities. You give them a compelling backstory, and you perhaps smooth over a few of their less savory traits. This, in essence, is what Jung called the persona. The persona is the social mask we wear. It's the version of ourselves we present to the world. The good student, the dedicated employee, the caring friend, the tough leader. For Sarah, her persona is that of the hyper-competent, always in control professional, the one who values unflinching honesty. It's not necessarily fake. It's often built from genuine aspects of our personality. Think of it like your public profile. Carefully curated, showing your best angles, designed to make a specific impression. And there's nothing inherently wrong with having a persona. We needed to navigate social interactions, to function in different roles. You wouldn't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your child, or your best friend. The persona allows for that flexibility. But here's where the self-deception begins to creep in, almost like a subtle poison. Jung warned that we can become so identified with this mask, so in love with the role we're playing, that we start to believe it is all we are. We forget there's an actor behind the mask. Sarah, for instance, so deeply believes in her persona of infallibility that she cannot even begin to entertain the possibility that she might be a significant part of her own problems. To admit that would be to crack the mask, and that feels terrifyingly vulnerable. So, if the persona is the polished, public-facing self, what happens to all the bits that don't fit that shiny image? What about the insecurities, the desires we deem unacceptable, the anger, the envy, the selfishness, the vulnerabilities? What about all those thoughts and feelings that make us squirm if we even dare to acknowledge them in the dead of night? Well, those don't just vanish. Jung had a name for this hidden realm too, the shadow. The shadow is like the dark side of your personal moon. It's always there, but you rarely show it to the world, and often you try not to look at it yourself. It's the repository of everything we've disowned about ourselves. All the traits that we were taught were bad or unlovable as children, all the impulses that contradict our carefully crafted persona, they get relegated to the shadow. For Sarah, her shadow might contain a deep-seated fear of failure, which ironically fuels her sometimes overbearing ambition. It might hold a streak of arrogance born from that fear, or perhaps a hidden resentment towards those she perceives as less capable. Because her persona is built on honesty and competence, these less palatable aspects are banished into the darkness of her unconscious. She doesn't see them in herself. Or, more accurately, her mind ensures she doesn't see them. And here's a crucial insight from Jung. The shadow isn't necessarily evil. It's simply unlit. It holds raw, unexpressed energy. Sometimes, it even holds positive traits that we suppress, perhaps a hidden creativity, a wilder, more spontaneous part of ourselves that our rigid persona couldn't accommodate. But because it's kept in the dark, unacknowledged, it tends to fester. And when it does emerge, it often does so in twisted, unhelpful ways. This is where the self-deception becomes truly intricate, because the mind is desperate to maintain the integrity of the persona and keep the shadow locked away. It employs all sorts of ingenious tactics. One of its favorites? Projection. Ever met someone who constantly accuses others of being selfish, yet seems completely oblivious to their own self-centered behavior? Or someone who rails against dishonesty while subtly bending the truth to their own advantage? That's often the shadow at play. We see the disowned parts of ourselves in other people. Sarah, for example, blames her team for not pulling their weight or her partner for being unreasonable. It's far easier for her mind to point the finger outwards than confront the uncomfortable possibility that these very traits, a lack of true collaborative spirit or a degree of unreasonableness, might actually be lurking within her own shadow. Does any of this start to sound familiar? Think about the people you know. Think, if you dare, about yourself. What are the qualities you most dislike in others? Jung might suggest that these intense reactions could be valuable clues, little breadcrumbs leading back to the disowned parts of your own psyche. So, we have a persona, the idealized mask we present, and we have the shadow, the hidden collection of everything we deny. The constant effort to maintain the separation, to keep the mask perfectly in place and the shadow locked down, is a monumental psychic task. It requires enormous energy, and it's the very engine of self-deception. Our mind become expert spin doctors, constantly rationalizing, justifying, and reframing reality to fit the narrative that our persona is true and our shadow doesn't exist. Sarah's bad luck and difficult partner are perfect examples of this internal spin. It's a fragile piece, though, isn't it? Living this way, because the truth, as Jung knew, has a way of bubbling to the surface. The more we suppress the shadow, the more power it gains, and the more likely it is to erupt unexpectedly, sabotaging our lives in ways we then, of course, blame on something or someone else. This internal conflict, this war between who we pretend to be and who we fear we are, is a constant source of anxiety and unease, even if we can't quite name it. And the scariest part? Most of this happens beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. We are both the deceiver and the deceived, all within the confines of our own skull. Jung's warning wasn't just a philosophical musing. It was a practical observation about the very architecture of our minds. But if our minds are so adept at fooling us, are we doomed to live in these self-made illusions forever? Is there a way out of this labyrinth? Jung believed there was. And that path, perhaps counterintuitively, leads directly into the darkness we've been so desperately trying to avoid. So, we've met Sarah, our stand-in for the everyday self-deceiver. We've explored Jung's ideas of the persona, that polished mask we show the world, and the shadow, the hidden closet where we stuff all the parts of ourselves we'd rather forget. We've seen how the mind, in its quest for safety and approval, becomes an expert illusionist, convincing us that the mask is a reality. But here's where the path takes a darker, more complicated turn. What happens if we just continue this way? If Sarah keeps blaming bad luck and unreasonable partners? If we keep polishing our personas while ignoring the rumblings from the shadow? Is it simply a case of blissful ignorance? Jung would argue, quite forcefully, that it's anything but blissful. In fact, the persistent avoidance of our own truth, this deep-seated self-deception, comes at a tremendous cost. Think of it like neglecting a wound. You can cover it with a pristine bandage, your persona, but underneath, infection can spread. Internally, living a life dictated by the persona and haunted by an unacknowledged shadow often leads to a pervasive sense of anxiety, a feeling that something is fundamentally off, even if you can't pinpoint why. You might achieve all the external markers of success that your persona craves, yet feel a profound hollowness inside, a nagging sense of inauthenticity. It's the soul's quiet protest, the feeling of being an imposter in your own life. Sarah, despite her outward confidence, likely feels this gnawing emptiness. Her successes don't truly satisfy because they are achievements of the mask, not the whole person. And externally, the consequences can be even more devastating. That repressed shadow energy doesn't just sit quietly. It seeps out. It projects onto others, poisoning relationships, just as Sarah's unacknowledged arrogance or fear of failure might be subtly alienating her colleagues and her partner. We find ourselves repeating the same destructive patterns, attracting the same kinds of problematic situations or people, wondering why life keeps dealing us the same bad hand. Jung's insight here is startling. Often, what we perceive as fate is simply our unacknowledged shadow, orchestrating events from behind the scenes of our conscious awareness, trying desperately to get our attention. It will make itself known, often by tripping us up, by creating crises, until we are forced to look within. But here's a crucial twist, a layer that makes this journey even more challenging. It's not just an individual battle we're fighting. In many ways, modern society itself seems to encourage this state of self-deception. Think about it. We live in an age of curated realities. Social media, for instance, is practically a persona-building factory, isn't it? We showcase our highlight reels, our filtered selfies, our carefully crafted statuses. We are constantly invited, even pressured, to present an idealized version of ourselves, and we are rewarded with likes and validation when we do. The pressure to be on, to be perfect, to never show weakness is immense. Workplace cultures, too, often demand a specific kind of persona. The ever-enthusiastic team player, the ruthlessly efficient executive, the always agreeable subordinate. Step outside these expected masks. Show a little too much of your messy, authentic, perhaps shadow-filled self, and you risk being misunderstood, marginalized, or even penalized. Even our families, with the best intentions, often implicitly teach us from a young age which parts of our personality are acceptable and which parts should be hidden away. Don't be too loud. Don't be too sensitive. Nice girls don't get angry. Boys don't cry. These messages, absorbed over years, contribute to the construction of our persona and the repression of our shadow. So, the path to self-awareness isn't just about an internal struggle. It's about navigating a world that often seems to prefer our illusions. We're swimming against a powerful cultural current that values the surface over depth, the appearance over the substance. This makes the temptation to retreat into the comfort of self-deception even stronger. Why rock the boat when a persona is getting us by, even if it feels a little hollow? This brings us to the truly daunting part of Jung's message. Confronting the shadow, beginning to dismantle these layers of self-deception, isn't a simple self-help fix. It's not about discovering a few flaws and tidying them up. Jung called the journey toward wholeness individuation, and he described it as the work. And it is work, often painful, deeply uncomfortable, and profoundly challenging. It means willingly turning towards the aspects of yourself that you have spent a lifetime denying, disowning, and projecting onto others. It means looking into the mirror and asking, what if the monster I see in others is actually a reflection of a part of me? It requires immense courage to sit with the shame, the fear, the guilt, or the anger that these hidden parts might bring to the surface. It's a journey into your own personal underworld. And here lies a cliffhanger, a question that might be forming in your mind right now. If our minds are wired for deception, if society often pushes us further into it, and if the path out involves facing what seems like our own inner darkness, is it even possible to succeed? What if the shadow contains things we genuinely can't handle? What if, in trying to find our true selves, we only end up more lost? The allure of the familiar illusion, the devil you know, can suddenly seem very, very appealing compared to such a perilous quest. Is there a map for this treacherous terrain? And what kind of treasures or terrors await those brave enough to embark? The path into our own hidden depths, into the realm of the shadow, certainly sounds intimidating, doesn't it? Confronting the parts of ourselves we've meticulously hidden, often for very good reasons rooted in past hurts or societal expectations, can feel like preparing for battle. The fear that we might find something monstrous, something unforgivable, is very real. And the mind, that master of illusion, will often scream at us to turn back, to stick with a comfortable, familiar story of our persona. So, what did Jung, our seasoned guide to these inner landscapes, suggest? Did he offer a magic sword to slay the inner demons? No. His wisdom was far more nuanced, more profound, and ultimately more healing. Jung didn't advocate for the annihilation of the shadow, nor the destruction of the persona. Instead, he spoke of integration. Imagine it not as a battle, but as a difficult, yet ultimately rewarding process of reclamation. It's about turning, with courage and a surprising amount of compassion, towards those disowned parts of yourself. It's about acknowledging that the anger, the fear, the insecurity, the unacceptable desires, they are all part of the human experience. They are part of your experience. The goal isn't to become perfect or to eradicate these traits, but to understand them, to see where they came from, and to bring their energy back into the whole of your being in a more conscious, constructive way. When we do this, something remarkable happens. The shadow, when met with awareness instead of repression, often begins to reveal its hidden gifts. Contained within that darkness might be your suppressed creativity, your unclaimed assertiveness, your deepest intuition, your capacity for profound empathy, perhaps hidden because you once felt too much too soon. As Jungian thought often beautifully puts it, the gold is in the dark. And what of the persona? It doesn't vanish either. Instead, it becomes more flexible, more authentic. It transforms from a rigid mask, desperately trying to convince the world and yourself of its reality into a more conscious and adaptable interface, a way to meet the world without losing touch with the truth of who you are behind it. You can still play your roles, but you know you are playing them. You are no longer solely defined by them. So, how does one embark on this work, this journey of individuation, as Jung called it? There's no simple 5-step plan, no quick fix. It's a deeply personal, often lifelong process. But there are compass points. It begins with radical self-honesty, learning to observe your thoughts, your emotional reactions, your projections onto others, without immediate judgment, asking yourself, why did that person's comment trigger such a strong reaction in me? What might that say about something I haven't acknowledged in myself? Journaling can be a powerful ally here, a private space to explore these uncomfortable questions. It requires immense courage, yes, but also profound self-compassion, to understand that these shadow aspects, these defense mechanisms, were often born out of a need to survive, to protect a vulnerable part of yourself. You are not bad for having them. You are human. Sometimes, the reflections of trusted others can be invaluable, like mirrors showing us angles we can't see. A truly honest friend, perceptive partner, or indeed a skilled therapist can help illuminate our blind spots, not with judgment, but with insight. Think of Sarah again. If she were to begin this journey, she might start to see that her efficiency sometimes tramples on others' feelings, not because she's malicious, but perhaps because deep down she fears inadequacy. She might recognize that her frustration with her unreasonable partner is partly a reflection of her own unmet needs that she hasn't dared to voice. This doesn't make her a worse person. It makes her a more whole person, capable of more genuine connection and more authentic action. The project failures might become lessons instead of just bad luck. Her relationships might deepen, founded on a more truthful exchange. Ultimately, learning why you can't trust your mind isn't about fostering paranoia or constant self-doubt. It's about cultivating a wiser, more discerning relationship with your mind. It's about understanding its incredible capacity for storytelling, for illusion, but also its potential for profound insight and self-awareness. The journey into your own psyche, the courageous dialogue with your shadow, the gentle loosening of your persona's grip. This is perhaps the greatest adventure life offers. It's not about achieving a state of flawless perfection, but about moving toward wholeness. It's about reclaiming all the lost pieces of yourself and becoming more truly, more authentically who you are meant to be. And perhaps the ultimate act of trusting your mind is to trust its capacity to grow, to learn, and to guide you, not away from the darkness, but through it towards a more integrated and meaningful existence. So, the question isn't just can you trust your mind, but rather, are you willing to truly get to know it, shadows and all? Because within that knowing lies the path not just to self-understanding, but to a richer, more compassionate engagement with the world and with yourself.